when you say international community, it's 190 plus countries, right? 190 plus countries, to have them all together in the same way, I don't think is realistic. But what we can see is the majority of the international community support Myanmar, right? Myanmar democracy restoration. So I think that's the best case, actually. I don't think it is realistic to think that everybody will come along. So even within the Myanmar, within the country, right, getting everybody to agree is difficult. Imagine having 190 plus country to agree on one is difficult. So that's one. But of course, China and Russia is always on the wrong side of the history. Wrong side of the history. But the international community, those that are on the right side of the history, has been very consistent in supporting Myanmar, and they all agree that non-lethal is the best, right? Because we have seen when the lethality is introduced, the post-conflict become much more complex. And in many ways, maybe you may win the battle, but you may not win the war with the post-conflict, with killing each other, right, type of things. So they don't want that. And I personally believe that we can win with non-lethal as well, based on my research and my own personal experience as a military officer, right? So, I truly believe in non-lethal. And for NUG and for the Revolution Coalition forces, they have to believe that they need to focus less on the lethal and more on the non-lethal. They just have to shift the strategy a little bit, right? The phase one, they have been very successful, right, up to this point. But phase two is getting to the tipping point. And you may not get to the tipping point the way you get to where you are. It's time to shift the, strategy to more, like I said, 75-25. Stop focusing 100% of your resources and effort and time on the 25%. They need to apportion 75-25, like I was saying, right? So that's, I think road to victory is, majority of it is non-lethal. It is really important for Myanmar to be democracy, actually, because Myanmar is a very strategic location. Myanmar is located at the very strategic juncture in Asia, in Southeast Asia, because we know from even World War II, right? World War II, Japan needed Myanmar because it's in a very strategic location. Even British, right? British wanted Myanmar because it wanted the back door to China. Right? So it's a very strategic country. So also, when Myanmar was democracy, it has the most, the economic growth was the highest, and Myanmar is not a small country. It's a big market, 54 million people. And they can buy and spend, right? That's a great market for ASEAN countries as well as China. And as for Russia, Russia is kind of out of region, and it doesn't really have that much tie per se with Myanmar except through the military. And Russia is always a spoiler. Russia is a spoiler. So let's just put Russia aside for now and just think about China and the ASEAN countries. Myanmar instability, Myanmar instability is bad. They get the direct effect, right? They get the direct impact. And the Myanmar instability will always be there if the military is in charge. If the military is there, Myanmar will always be unstable because, as I said before, Myanmar military is no longer a professional military. It is now an organized crime syndicate. It has behaved like an organized crime syndicate. There is no rule of law. They rule by law, but their rules are unfair, unjust, and it's arbitrary, capricious and arbitrary rules. They just wake up one morning, and so in that type of environment, when you have investment in Myanmar, you don't know whether or not it will last, right? One day they woke up and they want that land, and they just take it away from you, right? They will pass some type of a law and then take it, right? So, it is in the best interest of the China, India, and ASEAN to have Myanmar as a democratic country rather than under the military rule. It's a short term to have the military rule, to have some level of stability, if they call it. But as long as people don't accept it, it will not be stable. It will not be stable. As well as, people ask about Rohingya. Rohingya will never be able to return as long as the military is there, right? As long as military is there. So, anyways, to conclude, it is the best interest of all the country in Asia, Indo-Pacific region, to have Myanmar as a democracy. Well, Moscow will never give anything free. That's for sure. Because even before, when they send, they buy weapons and they have to send their people to be trained on these weapon systems, some of the military education they all have to pay. Russia never give it out free, right? But Russia is right now needing friends because almost, again, Russia also in the same club as Myanmar. So Russia, supposedly the major power, to have to rely on Myanmar as their friend, their own very few friend doesn't seem like a very major power like to me, right? But Myanmar also, they also need a friend, right? Major power backing, and that's why they're dealing with Russia. But that they're trying to balance Russia to balance China. And that's also make China uncomfortable, right? So that's why instead of buying weapons from China, they're buying weapons from Russia. And why is that? And then they were, if Russia start to get into their territory, into their sphere of influence, China doesn't like that, right? So, there's a possibility if military is able to take control of the country, Russia will play a major role in there. And again, back to China, it's not good for China's interest, right? And people talk about major power proxy war in Myanmar, right? It's not between U.S. and China. It's actually Russia and China. Because look at the weapons. Who is killing the Myanmar people most? It's a Russia weapon and Chinese weapons. We don't have American weapons killing people, right? So, it's the Russia's role. It could have a boomerang effect on Myanmar by relying so much on Russia, because China may not find it in its interest.